It's no secret, I'm a single mother, and I've been a single mother from day one. I'm a tough love kind of parent.
And is. I kind of felt like the love was almost conditional in a way. How difficult was it for you raising a teenage daughter? Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mother Daughter Mixtape, where we talk everything love, life, and lessons learned along the way. My name is Jada.
And my name is Charmaine.
And welcome to our podcast. Welcome back, y'all. Welcome to season 2 of the Mother Daughter Mixtape. We just wrapped up season 1. Took a break.
Yeah.
A much needed break. Yeah, for sure. Please.
Stop it already.
A much needed break
from my mama, okay?
Please. A much needed break from season 2 as we,
from season 1.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We're so excited about season 2 that we just want to jump right in.
Yeah, I was going to say a much needed break from season 1 as the year wrapped up, 2024, getting ready for 2025, getting our mind right for 2025, setting goals for 2025, and just really getting our lives together as we start a new year. So now we're in the springtime, April.
My favorite time of year, by the way. I love spring.
It's like a season of rebirth,
renewal, like all of that.
So I think this is a good time for us to really start off.
I agree.
A new season.
I agree.
So
awesome. So today we thought we would start the season by talking about our relationship, and kind of how it has morphed and just changed over the years. We won't go back too much into like her childhood and things like that.
It's only because I don't remember.
Well, if she doesn't remember, then clearly I don't remember, because first of all, can we take a pause?
You must have missed saying that. Can we take a pause?
I did. Can we take a pause? I had a birthday that we did not get to celebrate on the pod, right? March 5th. So I recently had a birthday. I am almost 50. Like, I can't even say the number. I just tell people I'm almost 50 now. So, but technically I'm 49. So recently had a birthday, and where I was going with that was memory. Like, my memory is like non-existent these days. So
it's been like that since before she was 49. Y'all don't get it twisted. The memory has been shot for a while.
Listen,
but
I'm sure mothers out there, y'all can understand, because, those early years, especially when you had some good times, I'll say, things just kind of fade to the back, and some things you want them to fade to the back. So we're not going to talk about that, but yeah, we won't jump too much into the early years. But I think overall, would you say that you had like a decent childhood?
Yeah.
Just yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna jump right in, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
So grab a smoothie, get comfy, and let's hit play on today's episode.
Pow.
You changed from boom to pow?
I did. Listen, It's a new season.
Okay.
It's a new season.
All right, cool. So like my mother said, we are talking about our relationship and how it has evolved and changed over the last 25 going on 26
Who's
years.
Really getting old?
Please.
I'm getting better. She's getting older.
Okay. So yeah, my birthday is actually about a month away. So I'll be turning 26. And yeah, ever since I turned 25, I've just been trying to hold on to my 20s. I don't understand
why.
I just feel like it just flies by.
I mean, time and life does. I mean, you're never going to be any younger, right? So cherish those days, years, make the best of it.
Yeah, I guess. So like my mom said, she's 49, I'm 25. So over the last 25 years, what has motherhood meant to you from the day that you found out you were pregnant to like you giving birth to me, and then, you know, as the years kind of progressed, as I started to grow, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret, you know, I'm a single mother, and I've been a single mother from day one. You know, your dad and I never married. And not that that was what I wanted for myself, but that was the circumstance that, you know, we, you know, found ourselves in. So, it's been a rewarding experience. Now, has it been challenging? For sure. You know, there have definitely been times where, you know, I wished I had like a partner that was more involved and more engaged and, you know, could take some of the load off of, you know, being a parent. Because in my opinion, like parenting is one of the most difficult things you will ever do in life, right? Because you're responsible for kind of how that little person becomes, you know, an adult and a grown up, and, you know, you pour so much into them, or at least you should be pouring into them, that you just want to make sure that you're guiding them correctly. And did I make all the right decisions? Absolutely not. But, you know, you deal with what you have, you know, during that time, and you try to make the best of it. Of course, I could look back and say, I wish I had done this differently, or, you know, I should have been more engaged in this area and things like that. But I will say that knowing who you are today and how you are today as a human being, as a woman, I am super duper proud. Like I'm not one to pat myself on the back very often, but I have to pat myself on the back because I legitimately feel like I did it by myself. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's been rewarding, challenging as well, but I'm very proud when I look at the person that you are today.
Yeah. Well, that's sweet. Thank you. But you did mention like you having a few moments where you feel like you wish you would have done a few things differently. Are there any instances that come to mind for you where you're just like, I wish I would have done X, Y, and Z differently?
Probably more in your teen years. I'm a tough love kind of parent.
And is.
So for me, that looks more like probably telling you what not to do versus guiding you what to do. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe during those years, I could have been a little more from I don't want to say loving perspective, because it wasn't like I didn't love you, but just from a perspective of guiding you just a little bit differently, and handling situations maybe with a little more care, because I don't want to say I can be crass, but I'm a to the point type of person. Like, that's just my personality, like across the board, not just with parenting. So I think that probably during those teen years, I probably could have been a little softer, I'll say.
Yeah, I'll agree with you, and not to, you know, throw you under the bus, but I do want to open up this conversation because I think it's important for any other parents that are watching and have children that are in those teen years or even at my age and may not, you know, understand that perspective, that I think around that time, I kind of felt like the love was almost conditional in a way, to where I only felt like I was either rewarded or I got a pat on the back, star, whatever, when I did something right. And I think that, like I said, it's just important to, you know, be mindful of that for other parents and stuff like that. Because from my perspective, you know, as a kid, you don't think to yourself, well, I know my mom loves me and blah, blah, blah. Like, you don't think stuff like that at that age. Of course, now that I'm an adult, it's like, I get it.
Sure.
But it's important in those years that you love on your child a little bit harder as we come into that age of like developing and understanding our bodies and understanding our minds and ourselves and us as little people as we start to grow up, because it's like, it's already a bit difficult even now, as you know, in my 20s and stuff like that, as I'm growing and stuff like that, it's difficult as I'm, you know, on my self-discovery journey and stuff like that. But yeah, like you said, just being a bit more softer, like you said.
Yeah, no, I definitely can understand that. And I'm glad that we can have conversations like this because, you know, like I said, I won't proclaim to be like mother of the year and the best mother ever. Like I don't want to say made some mistakes, but just, handled things probably a little differently than maybe I should have. And I recognize that. So I'm glad to hear you at this age can recognize the love was always there and always will be there. And I have to table myself sometimes because like I said, and especially, as we get older, we tend to be more set in our ways and like it is what it is. And, I really try not to get to that point of just shutting things down because, that's just how I think and nothing else matters. Like I never want to get to the point where I don't listen, where I don't value, your opinion and what you have to say. So it's, I think an evolving journey, and it will continue to be. So, hearing you say that just helps me to remember and remind myself to never forget that it will be a continuous journey. Yeah.
And to what you just said, I guess sometimes in a mother-daughter or parent-child relationship, sometimes parents can find themselves not, listening to their child or taking, I don't want to say advice, but hearing what their child has to say when it comes to stuff like that, because they find it to be disrespectful when a child or a kid or whatever finds their voice when speaking to their parents. So how would you, I guess, what advice would you give a parent to, one, find the line between disrespect and a child, standing up for themselves, which they should, and also like, what advice would you give them navigating that? Like, how should they navigate those kind of things?
That's a great question. First of all, the first thing I will say, it is a very fine line, because you want to give your child the autonomy to have a voice. You don't want them to feel like they can't come to you, because that's when they turn to other things, other people, outside influences that, I won't say 9 times out of 10, but a lot of the time is not right for them, and it's not going to guide them in, a direction that will lead to like positive results. Right. So I think, my advice would be to listen to your children. That doesn't mean that they're right. Let them know that they have a voice, that you're there and open and willing to listen. But at the same time, I'm still mom or I'm still dad or whatever. There's a certain level of respect that you're going to have for me. Now, I do think sometimes with today's parents, they do this gentle parenting. I don't know if I completely, can jump on board with that whole.
What don't you agree with when it comes to gentle parenting?
And maybe it's just my perspective of what it is, which could be totally inaccurate. When I think of gentle parenting, I think of, they're not disciplining their kids in the same fashion that we did growing up, or, that our parents. So listen,
I'm listening.
Spare the rod, spoil the child. I still believe that. So I believe in, and y'all probably call it corporal punishment at this point, but like, if you need to whoop your kids, then you got to whoop your kids. I'm just saying, I personally think that that's okay. Sometimes you got to whip them back into shape, literally. Okay. Your face does not look like you agree with me on that point.
I don't, and that's okay.
I mean, it is okay. I would love to hear your perspective on that in a minute. But I think that gentle parenting, when I think of gentle parenting, I think of white people and how they parent their children. I'm serious, because a lot of them, they don't like, I hate to say the word whoop, but they don't whoop their kids. A lot of them don't. Right. So I think that sometimes you just got to lay hands on them just to let them know.
Not lay hands on them.
Whatever
that sounds like abuse.
Whatever you want to call it. Now, I think there is a such thing as abusing your kids. Like that clearly is not what I'm talking about. Like, there is a point where you need to like stop. Like if you're just doing it out of anger and doing it from this place of, oh, you're going to respect me. Like it's more of adjusting an attitude or adjusting a behavior. Right. And sometimes talking does not get the job done. It just doesn't, in my opinion. So I think that, just to go back to answer your question, I feel like there is a way to allow your kids to have a voice, but they should also respect the authority, if you will.
I'm just thinking about like how you can teach a kid about respect and authority and things like that outside of whooping them or something like that. Like, I'm not saying that, like, how do you instill that in a kid, like a kid from young, so that as they get older, they understand that?
Yeah. And let me just jump back and say, I'm not saying that that's the only way that you can discipline your kids. That is not what I mean by any means, but sometimes you got to go there. I think that from very young, you telling your kids no and meaning it and not allowing them to overstep those boundaries. Yeah. So if I tell you no, I really mean it, you know. And I've seen instances where, you know, kids are acting out in public and, you know, the parents are just not doing anything about it. That's when it starts. That's when it gets out of hand very early on, and it's very difficult to reel it back in.
So how do you, as someone who hates the attention when it comes to stuff like that, say I were to have a kid and he or she decides to act up in the store, the last thing I want to do is whoop my child in front of all these people because everybody gonna be looking at me. That's so embarrassing.
It happened to you.
I'm sure it did. You didn't have no shame.
Well, it's not that I didn't have any shame, but I will give you an instance of exactly when you did that.
I feel like I know exactly what story you about to tell me.
I remember it like, it might not be a lot of things that I remember, but I remember this vividly till this day.
I don't know why this one instance of you whooping me in the mall. See y'all, this one instance of her whooping me in the mall.
I did, and I had to. So we were in the mall, and I don't know, you wanted to do something, and I tried the gentle parenting. And I was like, you know, like, no, don't do that. And I feel like because you probably thought, oh, we're in public, she's not going to do anything. Baby,
I wouldn't know because I was too young to remember. I don't even remember that.
I don't remember exactly what you did, but I remember telling you not to do something or no, and you continued to do it. And it wasn't like I just tapped you a couple of times just to let you know mama ain't playing. Not today. Okay.
Tap me a little bit of times. I don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like after that, I guess who didn't have a problem anymore? Me. So I feel like in that instance, because it's almost like a shock to the child, because one, they're not expecting you to do it, right? So you're shocking them like, oh, okay, I know she might do this at home, but now she's doing it in public. Okay, let me straighten up. And it sends a message. It sends a signal to the child to let them know, okay, I can't try her in any situation. So I feel like you can't be scared or embarrassed to discipline your kids in public because they know that they can get away with things in public versus maybe when they're home or around their friends or what have you. So you have to be consistent with it. Otherwise, they know those instances where they can get away with it.
I just won't have kids.
That's not the answer.
Because I get what you mean. And it makes sense to be consistent. But I hate being perceived. So it's like in that instance.
Who cares what other people think?
Me.
Don't. You can't.
That's so
as a parent,
easy.
You can't.
It's easier said than done.
I mean, for sure. I don't disagree with that. But at some point, because someone will always have a criticism about you no matter what you do. Period. Whether it's how you discipline your kids, whether it's how you decide to comb their hair or what clothes they wear. Yeah. Someone's going to have some type of criticism about you. You have to table that and put it in the back of your mind or out of your mind, period, because guess what? You don't pay these bills. You're not raising these kids. And you have to get to a point of knowing what's best for you and your family versus outside perception.
You're right. I just won't have kids. It's okay.
That's not the answer, but moving on.
So as we skip ahead a few years outside of the early childhood and things like that, how difficult was it for you raising a teenage daughter?
It could have been much worse. I think that you, in my opinion, were not like a grown teenager. You know how some teenage girls are just very grown and mature, but not in the right way. And they get very, I don't know, just adult like, almost like they think they're the adult in the situation. I don't feel like you were like that. Your teenage years, although they definitely were like real teenage girl stuff, I don't feel like I had to really, from a disciplinary perspective, it wasn't that difficult. Now, did you try me a couple of times? Absolutely. And I had to take a step back, like, okay, what I'm doing isn't quite working. Let's pivot. Let's change the narrative. Let's do something different. Try something different. Because it's trial and error as well. Because, you know, not everything that you think is going to work works. But you were actually a pretty good kid in terms of like middle school, high school years.
Was I?
I thought you. Okay, no. Let me back up.
Yeah, please back up. Yeah. Go ahead.
You were a liar.
I was a liar, and
go ahead.
I stayed in trouble with that phone. Do you remember?
Well, of course.
Do you remember that? Like, I used to, because my dad used to have stuff like linked to my phone to where he would see the messages I would send and stuff like that, and he would come back to you and be like, "She sent this message" or whatever. I don't know how y'all conversations used to go, but I remember that like I used to stay in trouble with my little red flip phone because I don't want to say I was being fast, but I was trying to be fast. Like,
and I guess the reason why I didn't initially think about that, like when I think about girls being fast, like they're out of the house, they're, you know.
You ain't let me.
Listen, when I say tight
Good.
shit, I mean, I'm glad I did it that way.
I'm glad you did too.
Because, I mean, you know, I know and I remembered from my childhood and being a teenager what that looked like, you know, and we were in a somewhat similar environment in terms of I went to an all black high school. Your high school was majority black, right? If not all black. So just that dynamic, although people may not think about how that plays into things and just the community and the people that are around, I think it's a different dynamic. So I just remembered how it was for me, you know, being in that environment and the things that I saw. I didn't want you a part of a lot of that. So I tried to keep you involved in things like you were a cheerleader and you really enjoyed that. And I love that for you. And really just tried to keep you somewhat active in terms of, you know, extracurricular activities and things like that. But yeah, that phone almost got you beat down.
I will say though, I'm glad that you mentioned the extracurricular because I think that's important, especially for kids at that age when they're coming up and things like that. Don't just throw them in school and have them come right back home. Like
they get bored.
Their brains are developing. They're learning, you know, different hard and soft skills at that age and stuff like that. And I think, like you said, doing the extracurricular stuff after they get out of school and all that other stuff, burn out that energy before they come home so that they could just take a shower and go to bed.
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of, especially in this day and age, coming home, getting on social media and
gaming and
finding themselves in, you know, different situations. Like these kids don't even go outside no more.
Nobody plays outside anymore.
Yeah.
It's a rare occurrence. So, you know, I wanted to encourage things as much as times are, of course, always changing and evolving. I wanted you to have somewhat a similar upbringing to what I had, because I thought, you know, was my childhood the best? Not necessarily, but it was good. We played outside. You know, I was a tomboy. You know, I would ride bikes and climb trees,
my bike and
you know,
riding my scooter.
Yeah,
getting my legs scratched up in the process.
Yeah, those are important times in your life.
Getting scratches on your legs and arms.
Yeah, but no, I think that, you know, making sure that your kids have some type of outlet, you know, and in this day and age with social media and things, pour into them, but monitor. You have to monitor. I'm not saying that you got to be looking over their shoulder every 5 minutes, but, you know, like you mentioned with the phone thing, I guess, whatever your dad had set up, that was good because I wasn't monitoring probably the way I should have been, because you probably would have been getting away with way more, like, had that not been in place. So I'm kind of glad that that was the case. And I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of forgot about that. The only thing that I remembered, like, as it related to your phone was when you got on Facebook for the first time and I told you not to. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I had to like completely shut that down because I just wasn't ready for you to be on social media like that. And I didn't want you to feel like, okay, she's like watching my every move, because that's what it would have had to have been, because that was probably 8th grade, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think you just have to be mindful because there are predators out there.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's not just, watching what your kids are doing, but watching what's being done to them and how kids are easily manipulated and they just don't understand. Right. So yeah, it's just so many other things to watch out for these days compared to your generation and then my generation. And it's always evolving.
Since we're still on the topic of like my teenage years, this is I won't say a sensitive topic, however, how did you feel, or what were your thoughts around like me being in that age and going through like puberty and stuff like that, and also teenage pregnancy and all that stuff? Because me and my mom never had the talk.
Right.
Okay. So navigating, what was that like for you? Because I expected at that age to have the talk with my mom and like see what you would have to say and stuff like that. I just knew that I didn't want to have no babies.
Yeah.
And that was it. That's what kept me from engaging in those activities at that age.
Praise God for something. We praise God for everything. But I was nervous about that. I guess because I never had to talk with my mother. We never had those conversations. So honestly, I didn't know how to navigate that. So I guess that's one of the things that I would say that I would have done differently, is to have the conversation. Like, yeah, we can talk about any and everything today, right? But back then, I didn't know how to have the conversation with me being the tough love kind of parent without just saying, don't do it.
Yeah.
And that's not the right way to have the conversation.
At that age, when you hear don't do it, it just feels like a scorning or scolding or something like that, of like, and it makes you want to rebel almost at that age. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I wish for sure at that age I would have done that very differently and had some type of conversation with you, even just about becoming a woman and, like you said, puberty. Like, I just never had those conversations with my mother. And so I guess I just didn't know. And I guess I probably could have looked up resources and, things like that. But during that time, we didn't really have like YouTube and, places you can go today that makes it very easy to say, well, how do I have this type of conversation with my child about X, Y, and Z? So I'm sure there were resources available, but you probably would have had to like really seek out those resources, and it would have been more difficult to get your hands. So you probably would have had to read a book or something like, so I definitely should have been a little more hands-on and from a loving perspective versus just telling you what not to do. Because, I think the flip side of that is showing experiences of teenage mothers, and this is what it could be like. And, is that what you want for yourself? And, there's so many different ways that you can handle conversations like that. But I think those conversations are important. I was just not prepared, to be quite honest.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, words, or perspectives you want to share for the teenage years before we move on to young adulthood?
I don't think so. Just want to reiterate that I feel like you've been a good kid your whole life, in my opinion.
That is so sweet of you, because I feel like I was a bit, I guess, challenging, I guess.
But on the flip side of that, I have seen parents with children that have been way more challenging. So I guess having seen how you were raised versus how I've seen other parents with their children, it makes me grateful that it wasn't that bad. Like, there's always levels to these things, right? So if we're talking about on a scale of, whatever, you were on, I would, in my opinion, on the lower end of the challenge
spectrum.
Bus. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, not to say, I mean, yeah, we definitely had our challenging times, but that's to be expected and that's normal. Some of these kids, you might feel like you gonna go to jail over them, and thank God that was not you. So that's all I'm saying is, it's not that it was totally easy, but on the scale, like like you say, on the spectrum, it was fairly easy compared to what it could have been. Okay. And especially coming from a single parent, because a lot of the time when there's not a father figure in the house or in the picture, things can go left real easy, and sometimes kids take advantage of that, or, they need that, not just from a disciplinary perspective, but just relationships and, how to deal with certain things. And, you're going to get a different perspective from a male versus, so not having had that, or I won't say that you didn't have it, because it's not like your dad was totally not in your life. I don't want to put that narrative out there because that's not true. But, having him not be in the house and, there,
24/7. Yeah,
exactly. So, that can definitely sway how you become an adult. So,
yeah, I'll say, before we wrap up the teenage years, that I think I've always known from a young age that like you were pretty much all I had at that time growing up. And it was like, while I did have those moments of like, I wish X, Y, and Z, or like, I wish, just like, I wish I could get out and do stuff, or I wish my mom wasn't so hard on me and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, I also knew that, like I said, you were pretty much all I had. Like, I knew I would only see my dad in the summertime, and, I would go spend time with him during that time and, call him every so often, but I was spending most of my time with you. And I have always been, even though I used to, one of my old passwords used to be like daddy's girl, but I've really always been a mommy's girl since I was a kid, because like I said, I've just always spent a lot of time with you, and you've pretty much been all I've known my whole life. So yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was just like, I never did take advantage of that per se, because it was just like, well, if I ain't got my mama, where I'm gonna go? And I'm not finna go live with my daddy, no offense. So yeah, moving on to the young adulthood and those years where now I'm getting ready to go off to college and stuff like that, 18, 19, and navigating my early 20s. I think that time was the roughest time for us.
For sure.
Like, I think some people think that teenage rebellion year is hard, and it can be. Yeah. It may look different for, every child parent relationship. But I definitely think those years of me going to college and really finding myself, finding my voice and things like that was hard on you and hard for me.
Yeah, definitely for the both of us. Because honestly, that was your first real taste of independence, right? Because as you eloquently mentioned before, you didn't really hang out and go out a lot, like in your high school years, like,
because she wouldn't let me out. Don't let her make it seem like I didn't want to.
I never said what the reason was.
I definitely wanted to, though.
Okay, I'm not gonna circle back to that. But yeah, that was like your first real taste of independence. So that for me was, I don't want to say difficult, but just different, because I had to learn to let go. Not completely, of course, but learning to start to let go and let you find your way and let you make mistakes without me cleaning them up. And for a parent, that, in my opinion, is the most difficult thing in the most difficult time period, because you've always been there to coddle them. You've always been there to clean up their messes. You've always been there to essentially just be, as probably not so much in the background, but probably more so in the forefront of just guiding them. And that is the time when you just kind of have to take a step back and let them find their way. And that's a difficult time as a parent. Mm-hmm. So how was it for you going off to college and finding your independence?
I think the moment you dropped me off at A&T, you closed that door and walked off campus, I was like, it's up. It's lit. Like, I ain't got my mama here. I could do whatever I want to. I can have my room however I want to have it without somebody coming and telling me to clean it up. Like, as soon as you left, it was like, and I'm not even trying to make it seem like, oh, it's a breath of fresh air.
No,
like,
speak your truth. I'm not offended in any way.
It's like you just have this feeling of like, I can do what I want to do when I want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what it is when you have like a kid or whatever and you're living with them and stuff like that. It's like when you live under your parents' roof, mm-hmm. there's a certain amount of rules you have to abide by, you know, cleaning schedule and all that, which I 100% get at this age. Yeah. And I think especially when COVID happened, and we can talk about that a little bit more in depth, when I had to move back, mm-hmm. I think I really started to understand that, because that was when you didn't have to tell me as often that I needed to wash the dishes, mm-hmm. that I needed to clean my room and stuff like that. I did it because I didn't want to hear about it. I did it because, okay, I understand. Like, let me do it now so that I don't want to, you know, have those moments where we're disagreeing, bickering, arguing because of something small like that.
Yeah.
So I think that once I got that piece of independence, it was really when I started to feel a bit more free and I can do stuff when I wanted to. And that's when I started to slip and slide and fail classes. I only failed one class, y'all. Listen. Just one. But it was also difficult for me to transition into that, because when I got to A&T and I started my classes and things like that, and I thought I could party and, you know, balance school and things like that. That was my first time doing something like that without having somebody over my back telling me, you know, you need to do your homework, right?
Right.
Or like, did you do your homework? So it was difficult for me, honestly. And that was one of the reasons why I thought transferring was going to be the right decision for me, because I just thought like my head is not in the game here, mm-hmm. and I'm overwhelmed. I was having drama issues with people at the school. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the reasons why I left A&T, because I was just so overwhelmed and I didn't know whether it was the right fit for me at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because from my perspective, again, that is really the first time that I'm giving you your independence, and I'm not calling you every day like, what you doing? Did mm-hmm. you do this? Did you do that? And, you know, letting you figure it out on your own. Whereas maybe I should have been maybe once or twice a week, like, hey, just checking in, you know, whatever the case is, versus it being more, did you do this? Did you do that? More of a check-in, mm-hmm. and letting you figure out, oh, okay, yeah, I need to be doing X, Y, and Z. And, mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that was a difficult time to navigate for the both of us, because it was really hard for me to just take more of a hands-off approach. I'm a little bit of a control freak, and yeah, that was definitely a difficult time for me in terms of not overstepping a boundary of parenting. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and I think once I got to Savannah State, that was when things started to make a little bit more sense for me, mm-hmm. as far as getting better grades. And like, I promise y'all, as soon as I got to Savannah State, the grades went all the way up.
Yeah.
Like, I just
honor student.
Yeah, performing a lot better. And honestly, since Savannah was so much smaller, there was less to do, which was good for me at that time. Yeah. But it wasn't a party school either, like A&T is, or at least not on that scale.
Yeah.
So that's when things really started to kick in for me, and I'm like, okay, my grades are getting better. I can still do a little bit of extracurricular. Like, I joined the NAACP chapter at, you know, my school, and I just started to find my way a little bit
Yeah.
as independence once I started to get used to having that independence. Because when you first get that first look at independence as a freshman, you just want to go ham, gung ho,
do everything, everywhere with everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, I ain't never did this before. Let me see what this about, So going to parties and stuff, especially me, like she said earlier, I didn't used to party like that when I was in high school. So once I got to college, I was at parties every week.
Multiple times
a
week.
So once it finally started to settle in and I was like, okay, well, that was fun. It's like, all right, back to work.
Yeah.
Once I, transferred. So were those years, once I got to Savannah State, any better, different, worse at all? Or
I was really just interested in you getting your education at that point. And I also think that kids going off to college is not just about school. Mm-hmm. You should be having a good time. Like, those should be some of the best years of your life, in my opinion. So I didn't have a problem like with the partying and, because I did it too, but there is a balance, right? Mm-hmm. So I just wanted you to find your balance, and you seemed to do that when you got to Savannah State. So it wasn't necessarily different. I just wanted to make sure that you were staying on top of your grades, because I was paying for that out of pocket. You had Hope Scholarship, thank God. So that helped. But I paid for that out of pocket, and I don't waste my money. Mm-hmm. You already know how I feel about that. So, as long as your grades were good, if you wanted to do the extracurriculars and party and do all that, I was all for it, because to me, college is an experience. It's not just about getting a degree. Mm-hmm. So I'm a huge proponent of kids going off to college. And I've had conversations with other parents who are trying to navigate, those end of high school years, trying to determine if their kids are going to go to college or not. Now, I don't agree or don't think that college is for everyone. It's not. However, if your child wants to go to school, give them a year. Mm-hmm. If after that year they're just not interested, don't waste your money, right? But if they are, let them kind of make that decision for themselves versus you making that decision for them. Because when you make those decisions and it's not what they really want to do, it will be a waste of money. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a waste of their time when they could have been doing something else, maybe like a trade school or, just getting work experience in some other type of way. But I just think that during those years, I really just wanted you to enjoy it, for one, because that's, in my opinion, that's what college is about. You should enjoy your college experience. It's not just about grades. Grades are important, though. So let's be clear about that. And you set those goals and those boundaries and those expectations up front. So I felt like that's what I did for you, and you kind of understood, what the expectation was. So I don't know. I thought transferring to Savannah was probably good for you, and I think it ended up very well for you.
Mm. So within that time frame that I was at Savannah State, obviously COVID happened in 2020. For the people that don't know, I graduated in 2021. And with that, so how COVID looked for me as a college student was,
Spring break,
yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we were hearing on the news that something was a-brewing, something was coming. Mm-hmm. And me and my friends were, like she said, getting ready to go on spring break and things like that. And we ended up going to Myrtle Beach. So we were in Myrtle Beach when my mom finally gave us that call and was like, listen,
bring it on home.
Yeah, this COVID thing is getting bad. Y'all need to get out of there and come home. Shut it down.
Yeah.
Shut it down. So left Myrtle Beach, came straight home. This is when we were living in Durham at the time. Mm-hmm. Came straight home and was locked up in the house for what, a year?
Yeah.
Year and a half?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was so difficult for me. Like, COVID was one of the worst times for me. And I say that, but also my birthday during COVID, 2020, that was actually my best birthday that I ever had. And it was only...
Your 21st birthday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was only because I felt so loved. Like, you got a bunch of people together to do a Zoom call. Yeah. And everybody came on the call and celebrated me, did cake, got my first bottle of wine. my first legal sip.
Let's be clear.
Yeah. But while COVID was very difficult for me, that was my best birthday.
Really?
Yeah. I've always felt that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
But COVID was really difficult for me because, like you said, having that moment or those moments of, a lot of independence and then coming back home to live with your mom, dad, whoever, and then going back to abiding by rules.
Yeah.
That was so hard for me.
I can imagine.
That was very hard for me, especially at that age. Like you said, 21.
Yeah.
This is the time where I'm supposed to be partying. Yeah. Like going out with my friends and stuff like that. And then getting locked in the house and, in the middle of college and stuff like that. Yeah. So I found myself being very depressed. For the people that don't know, I was very depressed during that time in 2020. And it started to carry over into our relationship.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I just felt like during that time it was really hard for us to find a common ground or
communicate.
Like, exactly.
We didn't communicate very well during that time, even though we were in the same house.
Mm-hmm. And since I was so depressed, I was very irritable and I didn't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
So my mom has this thing, y'all, where if you chilling in the room, she'll come and open the door, peek her head in, look at you for like 5 seconds and then walk away. Out. Yeah. She loves to do that. At that time, I was so irritable. Every time she did that, I'm like, what do you want? Like, in my head, I'm like, leave me alone. Like, I just want to be alone.
Listen, I just need signs of life. Okay.
That's fair. And now that you say that, it's like...
signs of life. I need to know you're okay.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I get it. But at that time, it was just like, I just wanted to be by myself because I was just so upset at the world. It's like, why the world got to come crashing and burning, at this time? I'm supposed to be in college. I'm supposed to be, at this point, I'm a junior getting ready to be a senior. So it's like, I'm wrapping up my, college experience and stuff. And I was just on spring break. Now I'm locked up in the house. It was just so sudden. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think, I knew that it was not easy for you to just come home and be home with me like 24/7, literally
24/7.
Yeah. So I tried to give you your space. I knew that something was different. I don't want to say off, but I don't know that I would have thought depression. I just knew that you were different and a little more secluded and, so I didn't want to step on any toes. So this was probably around the time where I took more of a hands-off approach, which I probably should have been the complete opposite. So I think that, during that time for me, it was more so not ruffling feathers and not, shaking things up and just trying to coexist without button heads. So, I think I just took the approach of being more hands off and kind of letting you do your thing. And if you need me, you'll say you need me, or if you need to ask, or if we need to talk about something, letting you come to me versus me coming to you, which again, probably might not have been the right way to handle that. But I'm non-confrontational by nature, so I tend to avoid confrontation when I can. And not to say that's not always the right way. I mean, I don't want to say confront something, but just be more assertive versus aggressive, if you will, and just making sure, like, knowing that I'm coming from a place of love. And I would like to think that you would know that, but I guess when you're feeling or having those feelings, you can take things a little more personally. And I knew that I felt like almost anything could set you off at that point.
It was like that.
I felt like I was, tiptoeing, and, it was a lot of that during that time for me.
Yeah. And I will say, like, you're not wrong. It is hard to navigate being there for a kid who's depressed because you don't know, like you said, you don't know how they're feeling one day versus the next. And I just want to put a note out there to parents. If you are curious or wondering if your child is depressed or like, you know, how to navigate that, it's important to find the balance between providing space and providing a safe space for kids at that point, because just pay attention to their behavior, their mannerisms and things like that. Because like you said, there were moments where I wasn't feeling it. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to be around anybody. I literally just wanted my own space. But you do have to sometimes, I don't want to say overstep or intervene, but for lack of better words, like if you notice that it's a pattern and it's like repetitive, like every day for like a week, you know, at some point you might want to step in, because then you never know what thoughts might creep in and stuff like that, of like suicide and stuff like that. Yeah. I dealt with that, not at that time, but, and you know, we talked about this before, but I've dealt with those kinds of things at a different time in my life around like 2019. And it was just like, once I felt like our relationship was changing, that was really hard for me. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's important for parents to kind of still be present with their kids, even though they're going through those times. And even, you don't even have to like be all up in their space, but just let them know like, hey, whenever you're ready, or like, hey, I'm here for you if you ever want to talk. You know, those little reminders, you know, it might do something for the wiring in their brain. I don't know how all that kind of stuff works.
Sure. So. I definitely wish I had been a little more hands-on during those times. And like you said, letting you know that if and when you want to talk, I'm here. Like letting you know the door is open. Even though proverbially it's always been open, but even just saying it or you hearing it can make a world of difference.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We've kind of just breezed through what the last 22 years have been, because now that I'm in that mid-20s era of like the 23 to 27-ish age, I think that we've gotten to a really good point in our relationship of, you know, just having that more, I don't want to say friendship, but
you are not my little friend.
I'm not your little friend. Okay. But it is important to have a friendship with your kids. And I want to ask you, like, what would you advise for parents that are at, you know, this stage in their parenthood journey, whether it's with a kid my age or even a few years younger, navigating from that really parental, like I'm the parent, you're the kid, and kind of transitioning into like a nice friendship that still has those boundaries of like, I'm still your parent?
Sure. I'm not even sure if I have an answer for that. And the reason why is because I feel like it happened naturally for us. So while there definitely has been a shift, I can't say for certain that it was something that you did or I did to make it happen. It just kind of naturally transitioned into that.
Yeah.
I think that like as you were graduating, I would say in your senior year of college, I feel like that's kind of when it started to shift. And I don't know if it was because more of like, you're about to graduate, you're navigating career and trying to determine what you want to do post, coming out of college. So I feel like, in my opinion, that was one of the areas that I excelled in, and, just trying to help you navigate that time. And I think that was the start of the shift of our relationship.
I would agree with you. And not to cut you off, I was going to say, I feel like the very moment that our relationship started to shift was when we moved here. And I was living with you, finding my first job. And I remember, because I was still healing from what our relationship looked like when we were in Durham and all that stuff. And I remember that I told you that I was looking at going to therapy and all that other stuff. I don't know if you remember that I said I didn't know if I felt comfortable doing that with you, because I felt like it was important for us to do it together because we had went through that whole tough period. But I had felt so, I don't know, I don't want to say shut out or shut off with you, but I just felt like our relationship wasn't there, that I didn't know if it was a good idea. I almost thought you would be offended if I told you that we needed to go to therapy together. And I remembered you basically saying, you know, I am a bit disheartened that, you know, you feel that you can't go to therapy with me and stuff like that. Like, it would be nice for us to work through that, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like once you said that and it put in perspective for me that, oh, maybe she does care about me. That's when our relationship started to shift for the better.
Okay.
So.
Okay. It's interesting to hear that. And I do remember that conversation and kind of how I felt when you said that, but I knew it was important for you to have your own therapy journey. And I just wanted to be there to support you in whatever way you needed at that time, and at any given time, of course. But at that time specifically, if that's what you feel like you need, I support that. I mean, it stung a little bit, but I support whatever, you know, you feel you need to get to a better place of self, right? So I agree that I can see that being the shift, or what, you know, started the catalyst, if you will, to our relationship getting better. So I think also during that time, you know, when you were here, again, you were moving, you had gone back to school, you know, temporarily, when they let kids back on campus, and then you had to come home again. So there's still rules. And I mean, you're 22 at this point, and I mean, you're an adult, but there's still some rules, you know, there are things that you have to abide by when you live under this roof. So I think it could have been, yet again, a difficult time, and I'm glad that it wasn't.
Yeah. What would you say that you love most about our relationship now?
The openness. I love how open we are with one another. For the most part, we can talk about anything. As much as I would like to say that, like, sex is off the table, it creeps in from, you know, time to time. I don't want to know all your business.
Please. I ain't gonna tell you either.
But, you know, we pretty much can talk about any and everything under the sun. So I love the openness. I love that I feel like we communicate well.
Yes.
And you are my friend. Like, you're my BFF. Like, literally, you're my best friend. And I love that. And I feel like I can tell you anything, and I almost feel like I'm about to cry, but like, I just love that we have gotten to this point in our relationship where it's just so open and honest. And, you know, I can tell you, like, I didn't really like how you know, said X, Y, and Z. And we've had those moments with each other, you know. So I love that we are able to do things and say things like that. And we know it comes from a place of love. And we don't, I mean, I might need a day, or like, I don't want to talk to you tomorrow, okay? But, you know, we know it's always from a place of love, and we can always come back to what we have.
Yeah. Right. I agree. And I think that's just important, because you know me, when you get on me, harp on me about certain stuff, in that moment, I be like, but, and I don't want to hear it. But then I take a moment, I process, I register all that's been said, and then I come back, apologize if I was getting a little defensive and stuff like that. But like you said, you just know that it comes from a place of love. And it's like, yeah, you are my BFF too. So, you know, I be thinking to myself, like, I don't know what I would do without you. So
listen, the feeling is mutual. Like, I couldn't imagine life without you. Literally.
Oh, okay. We moving on, because I don't want to cry.
Listen,
I don't want to cry. Any advice for any mothers and daughters that are navigating their relationships?
Yeah. Be open. Be open to listen. And this is to both mothers and daughters. This is not for one or the other. Be open to listen, be open to communicate, be open to being honest, and knowing that it's not always going to be, you know, roses and puppies, and, you know, you're going to have those difficult moments. And I think that's sometimes those are the things that really bring you closer together, when you get through those tough times and know that they are going to come. Like, it's just, I can't imagine where we would be if everything was just seemingly right, because probably deep down somewhere someone has thoughts and feelings of, I didn't like this, or, you know, I feel a certain way about that. So if you're being open and honest with one another, you're going to have those moments. So just communicate. Because I feel like I said earlier, that's one of the things that I wish I had done better over the course of the years. We've gotten there now, but open communication.
Yeah, I agree with you. And even with the openness, I think it's okay for parents to kind of shift out of that, well, I'm the big person, you're the little person kind of mentality. Because I feel like as your child ages, it's not going to smooth over well, because it just continues to feel like you're just belittling their kid and your kid and stuff like that. So like you said, be open, embrace the change, because it's inevitable. We are going to continue to get older and things like that, and the relationship is just going to change as time goes on, and that's okay. So.
And you both should be growing as people, right? You as a mother, growing and understanding how your child is growing and learning and developing and things like that. So I think just keeping in mind that, like you said, change is inevitable. So you have to kind of just grow up with the times and get to a place of not, like you said, being the overbearing parent all the time. It's easy to do, trust me, because you want your kids to do so well. So it's like, you mother knows best, or, what have you. And that's not always the case. I mean, this young lady teaches me a lot these days. So
I might know a little something.
But yeah.
All right. Well, that is it for today's episode, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this first episode of season 2.
Yay, we're finally here.
Of the Mother Daughter Mixtape. Be sure to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at the MD, M as in mother, D as in daughter, mixtape. You can find us on TikTok as well at the MD Mixtape, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts at the Mother Daughter Mixtape.
And we will see you in the next episode.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.